Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Well, I think we can start from now. Thank you everyone for being here. Let me just find my screen. Yep. And we can start from there. Okay. Should be able to see my screen now. Okay, well, welcome to this joint Data Plus Women London and France. So today's agenda or today's event is about marketing, AI in marketing and all what's around it. The agenda is quite simple, but we'll try to make the most of it. So we start with warm welcome introduction, especially for our speaker. What's niche marketing? Suzette will be here to talk more about this. We can ask her questions about it. And then we'll just close up in about 45 minutes or 50 minutes. So who we are, who is Data Plus Women? So Data Plus Women is an initiative. We're a community basically to help and promote women in data or who work in and around data. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We organize different events that can be hands-on, they can be just presentations or discussions like today. And everyone is more than welcome to participate. So I am co-leading the Data Plus Women France, who is basically myself, Katrina, Sarah, Elise, another Sarah, and two Marys. And we have Tuba as well, who is the co-leader of Data Plus Women London. Tuba, I'll let you present your group.
Yes, of course. I'm glad to present them actually. So we have Sarah, Ellie, and Evie in Data Plus Women London. We've been around for 2 years with Ellie and Evie, and Sarah has actually joined this year. Welcome again. And thank you all for all of your contributions to Data Plus Women. And you can actually follow us using that QR code. Okay, yeah, let's move on. So I do have 2 announcements to make and then some housekeeping to do. The first announcement, we always talk about this. Please join us to the Data Plus Women community on LinkedIn because it's a global group. We do have a lot of chapters around the globe. We do have collaborative events like this, London Plus France, but we did have a global one recently, which was amazing because we did have some pretty amazing speakers from all around the world. So you're welcome to join, welcome to post anything that you see fit there. Of course, bear in mind that we do have some terms and conditions, but you can just find them all in the LinkedIn page. If you go to the next slide, I'm just gonna ask you, oh, I thought there was another slide. But it's fine. Okay. So I was just gonna ask you to join us as a speaker as well. If you're out there, you have something to share. We're always open for more speakers, so please just use the link. We'll just send it through the chat. Use the link that we were gonna send you, and then come join us as a speaker. And as the last notes for housekeeping, yes, you can select a gallery view and Zoom to see all of our lovely faces. Please drop your questions in the Q&A box. It will be easier to it would be easier than the chat because we're going to follow them and ask them to Suzette while we're going on. Feel free to say hi. Feel free to share where you're joining us from. And also feel free to please use the hashtag Data Plus Women in your social media platforms. And this is being recorded, of course, and then we'll upload this to YouTube, where you can just enjoy this lovely session again. So I think that's it for me. I'll leave it to Selma to introduce our lovely speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, today we have Suzette Bailey, who's with us, who happily accepted to come and present what she does, her experience, and answer a few of our questions. She's the CEO and co-founder of Simple Marketing AI. And yeah, she's joining us from Australia as well, from Canberra. So the time lag is quite different. But yeah, she's here with us. Suzette, I'll let you continue your introduction.
I'm very, thank you so much, Selma and Tugba, for making me feel so welcome. It's been a pleasure having to dealing with both of you in the lead up to this event. So I've had a bit of a convoluted journey to get to where I am now. And I think that's quite typical of a lot of people. And I think the sort of the view that a lot of businesses are overnight successes is, I think, you forget about all the years and behind the scenes. And I think this is quite a regular situation. So in regards to, I started my journey actually as a geneticist. I did a degree in genetics and biochemistry and then moved into the Australian Quarantine Service, which, as you can imagine at the moment, is a little bit more prevalent, or a bit more sort of bigger than it used to be for at least a lot of people. But one of the things it did is it gave me a very strong understanding of analytics and the ability to sort of analyze data, which Data Plus Women, obviously, and Tableau software are very big components of it. And for a number of years, I actually ran and still run another company called Sensory7, which specialized in information management and records and document management. I know, not the most sexy and most interesting of areas, but for a lot of very large organizations, including the Australian federal government, which was one of my clients, it's a very critical function. And so from that, though, I had a lot of background and a lot of interest in systems and being able to help sort of organizations to manage the very large amount of information that they had going through their organization. And even now we have the situation where pretty much we double the amount of quantity of content each and every day. I think it's about every 11 hours, there's a doubling of the content in the world. And that's a huge amount of information that we are, as humans, trying to consume and trying to access, and being able to get access to be able to cut through that and have our message get to the masses is quite a big undertaking. And so sort of a number of years ago felt this quite strongly when I tried to actually take my expertise in information management and understanding information online, and failed abysmally. I bombed spectacularly. And I realized that a trained scientist who had been working with the government for a number of years didn't really make a very good person who could write marketing content. And what that meant was that I had to sort of park that for a while. And it's only through the advent of AI technology that I've been able to bring that back into the fold. And so I come to you as someone who is still grasping or starts the concept of being referred to as a digital marketer now. And so I think a lot of you who are going through and finding that we're all having to adapt and redevelop ourselves and redefine ourselves, it's quite a lot, something that we do on a regular basis. And it's something that over your lifetime, as technology changes and things, and technology, particularly AI technology and robotics, come into our lives and we use them more frequently in our business and in our personal lives, as well as our business lives and professional lives, we're going to find that redevelopment is actually something that we do more frequently. So that's sort of how I got into marketing. I sort of fell into it because I was, as I said, bombed spectacularly, so much so that I actually developed an entire platform to do it for me. And in fact, most of my LinkedIn posts, and in fact, one on niche marketing recently was actually originally written by the AI. And this is some of the things that we are now getting to a point where AI technology can help us to do a lot of the functions and a lot of the processes that we already are doing in our business and in our professional lives. So one of those things, as I mentioned, is marketing content. But the other aspect of AI marketing is being able to, look at data analytics and those sort of things. But I'll come back to those because I wanted to sort of touch on niche marketing, since that's the primary topic of today. And that article that, as I mentioned, that AI and I wrote in conjunction with each other, was sort of really focusing on this aspect of how we can actually cut through the chatter and actually start to make ourselves more visible in this very vast amount of information and information overload that we're actually getting each day. And so the first thing was finding a niche, and that can be quite difficult. And using things like being able to do market research, and there's a lot of AI technology that is available now, and a lot of platforms that will integrate AI into being able to do market research for you and provide you that data analytics. I was looking at a software company earlier today around where they can actually set up bots and AI in their particular software to monitor your website, your competitor's website, to tell you when there's trends changing and things like that. And all of that kind of information comes back to helping you to find your niche, because that information and that data is really useful in being able to identify where you can actually help provide your services and your software or your whatever your business is, and be able to target a niche within all of the sea of markets of something where there's actually a problem. So you can start to find your niche, because ultimately, even though we all have competitors, the thing with it is, though, the niche is where, as Australians, we say niche, Americans say niche, and it makes it a little bit easier, but they actually talk about the concept of the riches are in the niches. And it does work better for Americans. As an Australian, not so much. But ultimately, the sentiment is actually the case. Being able to just define and actually be able to identify who you actually serve and why is really critical. And that AI technology being able to help you with that analytics goes a long way to actually helping you define your niche. Or in the case, it may be multiple niches, but at least you then have that data analytics to back it up. The second thing I mentioned in my article was around being the source, the go-to source. So one of the things also about cutting through the noise and with marketing and that sort of thing these days is actually having the ability to be the place, or be the person, be the organization, be the company, be the go-to source for information. So it's about taking yourself beyond the actual what you do and being someone as a connector or as an organization, being the place that people are front of mind. Which then leads me also to the third one, which is being known for your expertise. Because ultimately, we all have our zone of genius. We, as a company and also as individuals, and we all have our own personal brands, which need to fit in line with our business and our professional brands, be that within an organization, and also if, in like my case, I'm a CEO of an organization, but everyone else in our organization is still defining their brands. And I'd really suggest that you as individuals make sure that you create your own personal brand within the brand of the professional brand that you actually sit under. So you might be an employee of another organization, but it's important to actually be known for your expertise. And so things like technology like LinkedIn, or platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook and those sort of ones, gives you that ability to actually get out and actually have that personal brand within the bigger brand of the organization that you may work for or be part of at the time. because ultimately we do not stay with the same organization indefinitely, and we do have to redefine both our personal brand as well as also being supportive of the brand that we're actually working with at the time. So for me, AI actually is not about being something that is a scary thing that's coming, that's going to overtake. And a lot of people with content marketing, particularly with simple marketing that generates content for you, we hear a lot, oh, it's going to take jobs. It's going to take my job. But the thing with it is if you're actually defining yourself and you're actually developing this personal brand and getting down into particular niches and being known for a particular niche, you don't actually need to necessarily, like, you will find that over time that people will come to you irrespective, and AI can support you in that, in getting you through and providing you the information and the supporting processes and systems that you're already doing. So as I mentioned, like with simple marketing, we're a content generation. So it's not about replacing people writing content. It's about supporting them and augmenting them to do it faster. So they're still responsible. They're still doing the actual content, but they're actually being supported by the AI technology to do it faster and getting the AI to do the grunt work. I actually say AI is sort of very structured, consistent, and processes, but us as humans, we're messy, inconsistent geniuses. And it's when the two come together that we actually get the magic. And so a lot of the things around AI in marketing and AI in general is about actually finding where the magic of the two to come together, where it can support you to do your job, support your organization, and support you to get your message out and to cut through the noise. So fantastic. So that sort of brings me into talking about AI in general in marketing. So as I mentioned, that we deal with content generation, but that's not the only area. So there's a number of different areas, and I think more and more AI in marketing and even in our particular lives and work is going to, I think, is really only limited by our own imaginations. So I've mentioned a few things like data analytics, market research, content generation, but there's also other things like being able to transform content into other sort of topics and content. So for instance, we're actually talking to a lot of law firms about transforming very complex legislation into easy to understand content that can be read by like a 10-year-old. And that's also helping a communities organization that's actually working with, they have a lot of very much migrant population that English is not their first language. So to expect them to understand how to write, to read complex policies and procedures that as a corporation or as an organization that they have is actually difficult. So by having this transformation and being able to convert it into something that they can read, it allows that organization to be able to service both their corporate requirements as well as also their broader staff base, in this case, not their customer base, of being able to support them and being able to provide information in a way that makes sense to them. And ultimately, this is what, when we're marketing, we really are having to think about what does our audience want? What does our audience need? And what information and how do they want it delivered? And the use of AI is helping us to facilitate that as we go through. So yeah, so I'd like to sort of open it up to questions. I'm a big believer in that. I love to much prefer answer questions that people are interested. Have we had any questions yet, or?
We don't have any questions in the chat yet, but I have a question for you, Suzette. Like you talk about different AI environments, like to write article, to manage agenda. I know you personally manage your agenda. AI manages your agenda. How do you set up such an environment, like for these processes?
Absolutely. And in fact, you're not the only person tonight who's asked me that question. I was at another event earlier tonight with another person who has a lot of meetings, and she needed a similar thing. So look, the first thing with it is, and like with anything with AI and other kinds of systems, take a step back. Look at the actual process and go, what is it that I actually need? And with a lot of the use of AI and that sort of thing, AI becomes really useful to be able to do and make things faster for things that we already do. So in the case of managing my agenda, you're absolutely right. I have a software called X.AI, and people can actually either just book through like Calendly or any of the other sort of calendar links. But the other thing they can also do is email my email and say, and add in the AI and actually have the conversation with the AI about finding a time in my diary. So instead of me being able to spend time actually having to, have lots of back and forth conversations with people about when's a good time to actually meet, they can be having a conversation with an AI. And this is where it gets really, really trippy. You can actually, if you also have the other person has an AI, and I have a number of people who have the same AI that we do, you can actually have the two AIs starting to talk to each other. And so the conversation then becomes around, instead of having a human assistant, I have an AI assistant for this one purpose. And then I actually then extend it on to things like when I actually go into the meeting, I then have an AI as my note taker. And then it will actually, and I can say particular phrases through that, through those meetings, and it will then record in the transcription and pull out that information and surface that information for my staff to be able to action, because I'm the blocker in our organization. I come out of meetings and then I go straight into another one, and I don't necessarily get time to do the action that came out of that first meeting. So I had to find ways of actually being able to allow other members of my team to be able to pick up those actions and action them for me without having to sort of come back to me constantly and ask me, what do I need to do?
That's perfectly usable from my end, because we do have customer calls all the time, which makes it harder to manage our calendars actually. But this still sounds like science fiction, even though we're using AI ourselves as well. So we do have another question. I can read it, if that's okay. Are there any tips you have for building your personal brand within your company? I'm an analyst in a big company and I want to become known as the go-to person. So.
Absolutely. Well, the first one that it's always been really good for me, and this was even prior to sort of the sort of marketing and AI, and was actually helping people. I think being collaboration and collaborative, first up, makes it, and being sort of getting yourself known, finding out some information that makes you useful to other people in your area. So if you're actually trying to sort of get positioned in the organization as an expert on something, well, go and be helpful with them. See if there's any opportunity to provide some help for them over and above what you do as part of your job. And that can then get you noticed, and people then go, oh, well, she's the person to go and talk to. I need to go and, if I have a problem or an issue, even if you aren't the person that actually will solve it, if you know who the right person is and you connect people will come through you, and you will get known to being that person to go to if they've got a problem. In regards to a particular thing that you want to get known for, though, make sure that you are the person that, writing about it. LinkedIn has become, I think, since COVID, there's been a significant increase in the amount of people using LinkedIn particularly. I've noticed a bit of a shift away from Facebook and some of the other platforms, and definitely more from a professional side. Start writing either a blog or LinkedIn articles, or starting to tweet. Start getting out there and putting out your view. Try to get onto some podcasts as well, because ultimately that then gives you authority. And ultimately what you're trying to do is position your brand within it. So it's not about you position yourself separately from the organization, but it's about making sure that you are an individual within the organization. Obviously, within some organizations, you do need to get a permission in some cases. Absolutely do it within the guidelines and the requirements of your particular organization. But a lot of times, most organizations will, as long as you're doing being very positive, which I'm assuming this is the case, you're going to find that it's going to be welcomed by most organizations.
Thank you. I mean, it gives a lot of inspiration. We have another question. Which one comes first, the niche or the product unique selling point?
Look, it's a bit of a chicken and an egg question, that one. What came first? Look, ultimately, I don't think it's a really much of a it's not really a black and white answer. And I know this is a bit of a roundabout answer to the question, but the reality is you are going to define your niche over time. You may define it as one. And in fact, we did it ourselves. We've done a number of pivots recently because we listened to our market. So you will say your unique selling proposition, you will define it in the way that your customer wants relating to your niche. But conversely, when your customer comes back to you, your prospects come back to you and say, actually, we need to this is really what we want. This is what we need. You may then refine that niche, and you might then refine the unique selling proposition to go with it. So I think it's about find incremental changes between, and that they will actually help to drive the other. So when you change and you refine your niche, that then will then impact on your USP, but vice versa, the USP helps to define, particularly in your market and into the people that you're promoting yourself, either be as an individual, as an organization, or both. Sorry. And that will help to actually refine your niche as well. So I just got a question. What's a USP? A USP is a unique selling proposition. So what that is essentially, think of it as like the equivalent of an elevator pitch. It's the ability to actually very quickly define what is the reason why somebody would do business with you. And so you could have a USP or a unique selling proposition for an organization, but I think more and more as individuals, we are starting to have that. And going back to that question around how do you actually position yourself as the expert within your organization or within the broader community, you're essentially defining your own personal unique selling proposition to be able to define to people and to be able to articulate to people how and what you do.
Okay. Thank you for that. And another question just came in. Do you have any initiatives for women who are interested in marketing to get to know your platform or like the data usage in general?
The best one is also to, for me, I spent a long time, and this is that sort of refer back to the whole, overnight successes actually have years and years of experience underneath. And for me, I'm, as I said, still getting used to the fact that I'm actually referred to as a marketer because I didn't define myself that way for a very long time. And but what I did do is I did a lot of research and I did a lot of learning. And I think ultimately all of us should always be learning, regardless of where we are in our stage of our career, in our life. Even, if we're retired, we're still learning about other new things that are coming. So in regards to, sort of this, it's find out who you actually like. Marketing is a very broad topic these days, and it encompasses a number of different things. And in fact, ultimately, you don't really realize you are marketing yourself when you are positioning yourself, as I said, as an expert within an organization. You're effectively marketing yourself. So as a woman, I think, follow some other women who are big in marketing. Find some people that you resonate with, as in, and some women and men, both. It's good to have a balance of people who are doing things that you want to do and that you want to aspire to, and ultimately see what they've done. How did they get to where they got to, and see if there's sort of lessons and things that you can take from that you can apply to your own life. But at the same time, not everything, we are not all created equal. So as such, be aware of what people do and take a lot of that different information, but adapt it to what best fits your life.
Yep. Selma, are you talking? You're on mute.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was just gonna say, I definitely agree. It's sometimes hard to just go out and like market yourself from a cultural point of view. I'm from Turkey, and we always tend to not talk about ourselves. And it was a hard time getting used to it, I'm not trying to say brag about what you've done, but talk about your successes is a big step forward from my perspective, for example. But I'm getting used to it, and I can tell it definitely helps, and definitely agree all the points that you just described. So that, thank you. We do have another question from Tatiana. She's asking what. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I just add something a little bit more into what you just said? Because I think something that some of you may or may not be aware of. I totally, absolutely, very. When you said that, I resonated strongly with that, Tableau, because as an Australian woman in IT, and I've run an IT consulting company for 20 plus years in a very male-dominated industry. That's been very difficult for me as well. And it was a very long time I didn't talk about what I did. And for people who aren't aware, Australians actually have what's called the tall poppy syndrome. And I think a lot of other cultures actually have this concept of the tall poppy syndrome in different ways. And us as women, I think we particularly take it on more so than our male counterparts. And it's something that I think, it took me a very long time to get comfortable with it. And it took me even longer to actually get comfortable with actually talking about failures that I'd had through my career and through my, sort of over the years. And realize, for a number of reasons with the failures, it was more because you just don't talk about that. That's not what you do. Like, you've got to talk about your successes. But actually people learn, if not more from your failures than you do, they learn from your successes, because it's not about the fact that you failed. As I said, I bombed spectacularly at trying to market out my business online a number of years ago. But from that, I learned how difficult it was for other business owners. And that's the genesis of simple marketing. So it's about what we take away from those things that's really important. But the other thing that's also about it is, I think as women, we don't always think about even acknowledging the successes and what we do well and what we excel at and what we are, what we are known for, even to ourselves. And I think sometimes for a number of years, that period of time that I was mentioning, with sort of fail, I was devastated about the fact that I couldn't sell a $500 course. Yet I was doing a six-figure, walking into rooms with 5 suits of a very large Australian company, doing 6-figure deals in half an hour. But I wasn't even thinking that that was actually of any interest to anyone, or even celebrating that as a success. And ultimately, it is a success, and it's something that had to be, I needed to accept it, but I also needed to be comfortable about to speaking it. So I just wanted to add that to what you're saying, because I think a lot of us as women particularly don't celebrate our own successes, much less talk about them to other people.
I fully agree on what you said, and I'm sure everyone can relate to that. But yeah, thank you. Thanks for your comments. So back to Tatiana's question. She's asking, what is your business model? Is it a subscription for your platform, and how do you measure success?
So We actually, as I mentioned, pivoted. So it is a software as a service. So our base product is a software as a service. But one of the things that we actually, from listening to our customer base, we have some very heavily funded competitors, US competitors, in a very different model of how they approach things to us. So we really couldn't go out and buy customers. So we had to sort of do things a bit differently. And I think from my background with my consulting company, had always had very much a collaborative consultative approach, which when you're trying to sell a $47 a month product is probably not the best use of your time. But one of the things it did was it gave us a really good understanding of our customers and having that feedback from us. So we've actually pivoted recently to doing tailored services. And so what that means is it's still we're actually providing a software as a service as the base model, but we're doing much higher end implementations back with the sort of size businesses that I had worked with previously. So for us, it wasn't about, what was better and what was worse, but it was about finding what was best for us. And for us, working with that bigger organization absolutely works through it. In regards to the celebrating the successes, I think that comes back to what I was just saying a few minutes ago around I think we first need to recognize what is a success and celebrating the small wins. It's hard running a business. It's particularly hard running a startup. And even also, positioning yourself, if you're starting out as an individual, much less an organization, around a particular area, and you're trying to get yourself known for that. Celebrate the wins, celebrate the little ones. If you get somebody saying this is awesome, or go out and, sort of be proactively making writing them down or celebrating them and that sort of thing. And coming back to what you're saying, Tug, before about the whole, we feel like we can't big note ourselves. The thing is, you may not have to necessarily tell everybody else, but at least celebrate it to yourself, because it helps about your mindset. It helps you keep you going through the periods where it's not so great.
Yeah, definitely. That's why you have to celebrate your successes and don't hesitate to promote yourselves. We have another question, and it's more about your day-to-day life these days. How you keep yourself motivated as work from home environment and challenging times?
Well, I had a little bit of a leg up on that one for most people, because one of the things about being an Australian IT consulting company is, we're a long way from everybody else. So, and in Canberra particularly, rent was of office space was actually very expensive. So I've always run a virtual office, and it's meant that I had I felt very comfortable with Zooms and that sort of thing. And in fact, it was an interesting seeing the transition of other businesses moving on to that and that side of it. But the reality is, it has been something that has always been, when you're working from home, you're running a business, or you're trying to be an employee within an organization from home, it can be very isolating. And so this is where I come back to that whole aspect of celebrate the wins, celebrate them as you're going along. It helps to give you that uplift and that motivation to keep going. Because look, for people who aren't aware at the moment, Canberra is one of the coldest places in Australia, and it's winter time here at the moment. And I had a meeting this morning at 7 a.m. and I can tell you now, lying in bed, the last thing I wanted to do was get out from underneath my very warm doona and actually come and be on that call. But the thing is, I had to show up, and having that ability to know that, yeah, it's cold, it's winter, it's not great. But you know what? It was, as soon as I was on that call, the person I got energized from the call. It was great to really talk. And I think that's the thing with it is be aware that sometimes it's going to be hard. But when you find something that energizes you, then do it. If that means walking, taking a 5-minute break every hour to go and walk around, or take 10 or 15 minutes and go for a walk. It's important, because it helps to get you more motivated. And ultimately, when we're on our own, it can be difficult. And if that means you have to reach out to somebody to get energized, or you need to go and, you know, have a virtual coffee, and actually have a virtual coffee, don't have a meeting. There is a difference, you know, sort of that type of things, and reaching out, because as humans, we need contact. And so if that means you need to actually take a break and reach out to someone, do it. You know, there's, you know, well, in most cases, there's no judgment. I think we're harder on ourselves than other people are to us.
Yeah, I think it's been hard to get always motivated this last year or year and a half. Yeah. Tuba, do you have any other questions? I don't see any on my side.
Yeah, I think we run out of questions. I was just gonna say there are a couple coffee breaks that keeps me going for the last year and a half. So I definitely agree. Just head someone up, just Slack them if you're using Slack or anything else. It's just the best. Sometimes it's the best half an hour or 50 minutes of your day that keeps you going. So, oh, Sarah just said she has a question. Okay, so this is, maybe we should take this as the last one. What's the best piece of advice you can give to someone wanting to start their business? I mean, given that you already done that twice, so
actually, there's a few failures in there as well, so there's actually a few more than twice, because that so yeah, look, and that's probably the first thing, is that you know what, sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay. And sometimes you when you're actually starting out, and what you think you're going to do in business may morph. And in fact, Century 7, which is my other company, when it first started out, there was 4 of us. There were and it was a web development company, but it morphed over time into being a consultancy around information management and records and document management. So related, but not quite the same. And that's the thing, I think, when you're first starting out, you might have a vision about what you're actually trying to do. And that's fantastic, because you need that to get started. But at the same time, don't be prepared to, or don't worry about actually if things have to change or if you have to pivot. Pivoting's a good thing. Pivot actually means that you're prepared to adapt to what your market wants, what your customers want, and that the people are telling you that they're actually interested in. And you know, where you can actually find something that works both with what you want to do and what the customers, you know, and customer and the market's prepared to pay for, that's the sweet spot. And listening to your customers gives you, that is probably the first piece of, you know, the big piece of the advice, I would say, and that preparation of being able to pivot. The next one for me was be kind to yourself. Starting a business or starting to promote yourself as an individual within a bigger organization, it can be hard. And you know, particularly the last year has been physically isolating. But when you start to pop your head above the poppies, in the case of the tall poppy syndrome here in Australia, you have people sometimes are going to tell you things that they'll give you advice, and they'll tell you, oh, that's not going to work, or this is not. But the thing is, the question is, be kind to yourself, because you have to get through that. But the same thing also, when people tell you when things aren't going to go well, or if things are not, that they don't like what you're doing, listen to who ask yourself, who's actually selling you that comment to you. Is it someone who is actually your market in the niche or the area that you are actually wanting to position yourself? Or is it a friendly person who really doesn't know or understand your market? For example, my father doesn't understand technology very much at all. And if I actually tried to talk to him about what I do, he'd go, no, that wouldn't work. No, that's never going to work. And if I took that advice to heart, I never would have been able to go be able to develop as two businesses. So taking the advice from the right people can be critical, and knowing who is it the person is Are they somebody who is actually going to be giving you advice that's relevant to what you're doing? Or is it somebody who thinks they know what they're talking about, but really doesn't? So that's probably a big one. Yeah. And the being kind part, that's always a big aspect.
Okay, we did receive another one. I know we have about 10 minutes, maybe just a quick one from, yeah, just the last one. If I wanted to be an artificial intelligence expert, what applications language you suggest to learn that complements Tableau? This could be the last one. I know you're tired and it's getting late for you, so.
Not a problem. Look, to be very frank, I'm not actually an AI expert, and this is an interesting. I'm a CEO of an AI company, but I have people who actually run the AI. And this, I think, is something to be aware of, is you don't actually necessarily have to be the AI expert to be involved with an AI company these days. AI is so pervasive and so much involved. But in regards to what actually ones are going, look, things like natural language processing AI, so ones that are actually helping to define language, or the language-based. And when I say natural language, or the same kind of language that we understand, those kinds of AIs are becoming very, very popular, and a very, very, huge amounts of innovations in that particular sector. But a whole lot of other kinds of AI is relevant. I mean, ultimately, it's pretty much a case of how long's a piece of string. I think the better question is, what is it that you're trying to do with it? Is it something that you're actually interested in? Because if you're not interested in it, just because there's a trend and somebody, that it's doing well or something at the moment, and there's businesses that are actually interested in it and employing it, but if you can't stand doing it, well, you're not going to last very long anyway. Whereas if you find that you have an actual genuine interest in it, then you're going to be able to get energized by it. You're going to enjoy learning about it, and you're going to actually be able to develop and innovations. Circling back to like me, I actually, when we first started Simple Marketing, with my background in information management, records and document management, I fully expected me to be the person that would actually be the one that would work with the AI the closest. And to be perfectly frank, I am not great at it. I'm great at deconstructing content methodologies, but we actually have somebody else in the organization who I nickname the AI whisperer, because he's actually much, much better than reconstructing it for the AI to write it. So even if you go in thinking you're going to be one thing, or you're going to learn one thing, things change based on your interest, what you're good at, and what actually works for you. And that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. You need to follow what is demanded on the market and what you like as well.
Combination of the two. I mean, the reality is AI in general is where things are happening. I think the use of AI generally is only limited by our imagination, and more innovation is going to occur because people are thinking outside of the box. And it's going to be people who are not highly technical. It's going to be people who have experiences in other areas, bringing that to the table. For example, not an AI related, but business in informatics, or there's that area is a lot to do with the DNA and that's things. My background, as I said, is genetics and biochemistry, but when I did it, that kind of thing was not around. But now there's a whole lot of sequencing. They actually created the vaccine, predicted vaccine options for COVID through the use of AI. And then they had to go through the more traditional methods then to actually sort of thing. But it's people outside of the AI community that are starting to look at and find ways to use AI in different ways. And I think that's really where it gets exciting.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see where the AI will bring us in a few years. Well, thank you very much, Suzette. Thank you everyone for all your questions. I guess it has been like a very inspiring discussion. We've learned a lot. I mean, personally, I've learned a lot today. I hope it was the case for everyone. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thanks for joining, Suzette. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Have a good day, good evening, good night. Depends on where you are.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.